Thank you for having me, and apologies for keeping everybody waiting and for being delayed. Part of the unpleasant part of being in government, where you're, no matter who you are, except for one guy, you're never really in charge of your own schedule or of events. So apologies again. But again, I'm really glad to be here and joining again Ambassador Sakuda, who I've had the chance to work with as both a colleague at the State Department and when he was ambassador in Azerbaijan, and so great to see what you've been able to accomplish here at this as we move on to these important issues. We're celebrating 30 years of U.S.-Caspian relations, and I can't think of a more critical time to be able to have a conversation and take stock of that relationship. And you just mentioned the different topics that you're going to be covering. All of them are critical. But as you mentioned, we stand here today, in between two eras at the beginning of this process in 1991 of where the world was and the countries of the Caspian achieving independence and freedom. And now we're here in 2022, and we are questioning where this region, with a broader region, even beyond Caspian, is going when it comes to questions of freedom and independence. And the idea that countries would be able to choose their own destiny and their own path is challenged and questioned. And the conflict that we are seeing erupting and engulfed in Ukraine is obviously today still contained to Ukraine, but the threat is far greater than just in Ukraine. The threat is the very concept of countries being able to, or determining that they can make choices for the freedom and independence and the mere existence of other countries. And that, to me, just underscores the critical importance of the relationship between the Caspian region and the United States and the international community. And when it comes to infrastructure, this region has some of the most complex and most impressive infrastructure projects that have supported the rest of the world. Pipelines that go from across each other and to the global markets. And this region's importance to the global market and to the global economy has only grown with time. And that too today is under challenge, because as we see what's playing out, as the war between Russia and Ukraine deepens, the reaction to it also has to do with how do we question and how do we evaluate the current infrastructure system that the world knows and has come to rely on for the last 30 years, and question whether or not that is enough. Is that going to be the infrastructure set that will support the global economy, or will that actually become the weak spot and the weak link in our global economy? And I know that I'm expanding beyond the Caspian here, but the Caspian is part of the answer to the challenges that we are seeing. So the importance for the United States is to maintain, and not just maintain, but to maintain, build, strengthen the relationship between our bilateral relationships with each of these countries, as well as with the region as a whole. And to do that, we need to do a lot more as the United States to broaden that relationship. But I think it also is time for the region itself to start coming together and using the force of the relationships with each other, of building and strengthening the relationships among the Caspian nations, and to be able to draw and look at the natural resources and capabilities that each country has, and to see how do we take advantage of those in a combined way. Because if you only look at what each country has and therefore develop the infrastructure that that country wants to have in order to get it out to market or to benefit, that's a limiting factor. But if countries start saying, I need to build kind of infrastructure that builds on the strengths of each of the countries and builds the kind of infrastructure that interconnects those, then it doesn't only strengthen the economy of each of the countries individually, but it strengthens the region as a whole and supports the global economy and the global geopolitical position between the international community and the region. And for too long, I think we have been on a slow roll and slow burn of trying to get certain projects approved between countries. The Caspian should be much more interconnected and integrated than it is today. And, you know, I left government on a certain date in January 2017, and when I came back, some of the things that we talked about when it comes to integration in the region, we're still talking about them. And that's a problem. Now, I think that we were in the place in the world that we were living in, that was manageable. But I think today we're in a crisis point that what we do today should be seen as an opportunity. But it's also a call for action so that we get through this crisis in a stronger position, defending the individual rights of each country, and defending and becoming a resource for the rest of the world. And I think there are projects that we can do, the kinds of political integration, and we have, and not just economic, but political integration, those projects are doable. And I think the United States, I believe strongly the United States is going to be there to support it if the will is there. So today, as we celebrate 30 years of independence, of this relationship, I think we have to look at it instead of just in celebration of the 30 years, we have to look at this as the critical moment that we live in. These are dangerous times for democracy and for freedom. And I think that if we look at what has happened just over the last couple of months of this war, and where we were 6 months ago compared to today, when we think about the threat to democracy, there was a certain notion out there that freedom was on the decline, that independence was on the decline. But I think that is not the case anymore. The world has come together. And I think that this is a moment for us to be able to work together, the region and the United States, the region and the European Union, and the region together with the US and the EU at the same time, to see how can we support the growth, the integration, the political interconnection that will then follow with economic integration, economic interconnection. And the Caspian should be seen as a place of connection between East and West, between North and South. I think that is what we can achieve if we continue that. Now, what do we need to do that? I think that we haven't done enough. We, the United States, have not done enough to put the relationship, again, on both bilateral with each country as well as with the region on the front burner. And I think we need to, as the United States, to increase and elevate. And I think we're going to see that in the coming days, weeks, and months. I think there's going to be a concerted effort to put an emphasis on the relationship and to increase the visibility of our relationship. And that's on us that we haven't done, that it took a crisis for us to elevate our level of integration and cooperation. But I think I would like to use that opportunity as we are going to lift the US participation in the region to see that matched by the interest and the understanding of the state of urgency that we are in by each country in the region. And I think this center here in Washington can and should, and I know you want to, play a critical role in encouraging exactly that kind of approach between the United States and the region. We have companies that are, some sitting in this room, US companies, European companies that are active throughout the region. And I think that we can work together, the governments as well as the companies, in concerted effort to bring about a roadmap of what would it take to get the diplomatic relationship between the countries strengthened, and using the company resources of what they're willing to do, together with our willingness to support it, to bring about real change so that when we come back and have this conference next year, we can talk about things that we've achieved and changed rather than just what we've talked about over the last year. Because I think the time for talking is behind us. This has to be a time as a call for action in the region and between us. And I want to add one thing on what I think this means as far as time, because we talk about a lot in the context of the region, the energy clearly plays such an outsized role in this region. But when this region interconnects with itself, it doesn't only then support the international economy by delivering more product. It also then means that countries can use less of their own product in their own economy. It increases the efficiency, which then, of course, supports the global economy because you get more product to the economy, to the global economy. And that's where you don't only invest in the oil and gas, the investment has to come also in some of the countries in the region that have tremendous hydropower that is underinvested and could produce a lot more electricity, but it's currently contained in the country where the hydropower is produced. But those are electricity lines of green energy, of clean energy, that can be shared across the region. This is not a region that should be afraid of the energy transition. In fact, this is the moment to start utilizing the energy expertise and the energy know-how to be part of that energy transition, to invest in cleaner energy resources and renewable energy and clean technology. Because the energy transition is not something that means that from today to tomorrow it takes place in the next, not even in the next decade. But as we advance through it, being able to produce more of the energy needs in each country from renewable sources will allow you to finance that by selling more of that product on the international markets. If you're selling more oil and gas as we are going to the energy transition and being able to satisfy more and more of energy needs in each country through renewable sources and cleaner technology and efficiency, again, that supports economic security, political security, and the diplomatic relationship, supports the diplomatic relationship with the rest of the world, while at the same time recognizing that the transition is actually happening. It may happen slower than some predict, and we're not going to be reducing demand for gas in Europe or around the world by 2025 or 2030, surely not. And in fact, we're probably going to be increasing demand for gas, especially for non-Russian sources of gas. So this is a great opportunity for the region. But even if it's slower, it is definitely on an unmistakable path. And therefore, the year, whether or not the year is 2030 or the year is 2040, beginning that process of preparedness should start now. So the region has benefited from its natural resources, but it has more natural resources to benefit from and can adopt, because of its expertise, it has the workforce, the knowledge of how energy systems work, to be able to take advantage of that and be preparing for the latter part of the 21st century energy picture, while still supplying the early part of the 21st century's energy transition. Those two are not a zero-sum game. That is possible and doable to do both of them at the same time. So I'll conclude by saying, just repeating what I believe to be the most critical points. I don't have to lecture anybody in this room about what's the moment in history that we're living in the world and how relevant that threat is in this region. I want to be able to come back, if you'll have me back, in a year from now, and to be able to look back and say, we, the United States, lived up to what we said we would do, which is to increase our engagement and involvement in the region, that we have achieved real progress in trans-Caspian and cross-Caspian relationships, political relationships among countries, and that has yielded a more secure, more efficient, and more strategic infrastructure and economic integration in the region and with the rest of the world. Thank you, and I hope the conference goes well.